Welcome, my name is Rage Mode, and today we're going to have a look at my single called Run together with PBC.
And watch 'em. Run.
Yeah, it's been a while. I sort of wanted to do this for quite some time now, recording a lot more videos on how I make my tunes, because first of all, it's really, really fun to show everybody how I do my sound design, how I do anything basically in music production. And I think it's a cool way to get to know the songs and especially the backstory. Yeah, so let's jump right in. So this here, as you can see, is the project. It's huge, way too complicated for what it actually is. Right now it's everything grouped together, but if we open up the folders, you can see all the different lanes, all the different freezed elements, everything basically. It took me so long to get this right. For me, Run was kind of my first approach to dive into the more club-oriented music, because beforehand, for me especially, it was quite easy to get around the melodic part and writing stuff and sort of introduce myself to, as I did with the remix or with Save Me, do introduce a lot of orchestral elements and the melodic elements. But for me, it always has been so hard to come up with a good and hard-hitting drum and bass, which I can play in my live sets. It started out actually, as all my songs, I think 2 years back in 2022 or at the end of 2022, basically developed over time from like a rough idea to then it sort of became a remix idea, which I then scrapped again because I wanted to do an original, and into so many different versions that in the end, 90% of those files or those lanes are copied from other projects and thrown together. That's why it's like a huge, messy project, and also a bit of a different, not like a different approach layering wise. Just like for me, it felt so confusing at some times. What is happening at the time? What is happening when? That's why the project is always, because there's a ton of old plugins on there, and in the meantime I also switched from Windows to Mac. Some things aren't loading because I didn't buy or install all the old plugins, but right now I think that's not the main point. Yeah, so enough with the talking, enough with the backstory. Most of you are here for the kick drums, snare drums and the sound design, so let's dive right in. Without starting from the top and going into detail, I think it makes sense to cover like the orchestral side and also the more instrumental side. So the main idea came together from a very first version, which just was those orchestra stabs, which before even they were orchestra stabs. Let me open it. Yeah, there you go. Those are the first two things which I can at least remember, which made the track idea. Some random ass sample stabs. I bounced them around quite some time and afterwards came up with the riff, which is now played by orchestra stabs. Yeah, a lot of reverb, a lot of filtering going on, but throughout the whole track, this theme kind of goes on, like the dun dun, the two stabs, which like completely carry the track. In the drop, they sound a bit different and more open. Like not even natural, they were just like brass stabs and some string stabs, which I ran through a lot of processing and to really get out the grittiness, because I didn't want it to sound natural at all. It just should be like full and in your face. To that, I kind of started writing an orchestral theme because I thought, why not? Those are the things I know and those are the things I feel comfortable with, even in a club track. It has to be done. I mean, the section is not too big. It's just like a horn, some strings, and a sustain note, which all came from Nucleus, because a lot of people ask me what orchestra libraries I use. Most of them are from Nucleus, which has basically everything which you need for an orchestral section. To those stabs, I added the 3 contact layers, which sound like this. Nothing special, honestly. It's just a flute. It's like the brass stabs and the sustained note, which comes in later on and just goes through the second verse or the build-up. To those orchestral elements, I obviously added a bit more synthetic stuff, so I came up with those elements to add to it. Yeah. some sample stabs, and the low end is from Serum, which I bounced out. There's a lot of stuff bounced in this project because it's so big and it got so messy over time. That's why I bounced out everything into audio. Yeah, but basically those are the two layers which are the main thing in the intro, together with a bunch of atmospheric stuff and FX. So as you can hear, it's not really a complicated theme because I always wanted to have an MC on there. And so I tried also to leave a lot of space in the verses and the build-up. Also, if we look further altogether, there is not much going on other than the stabs, the verses, and some small little extra details, like they're like really quiet and you can't even hear them, but it's like the sizzling from the side, and it even sounds a bit giving yourself shivers. It's sort of a weird sound, but I felt like it's nice to have something like that in there. For me, those are the things which make the track come alive, to be honest. Before covering the synths, I feel like we have to quickly have a look over the drums, which are also nothing special because it's not a lot. It's also like a lot of rendered out stuff from old sessions. So maybe I think the most interesting are the drops. Let's have a listen to the drums itself. And on the second part, since there is not much going on, I added just a simple ride, and in the second part, just a loop which actually plays the snare. It's just like... And moving on to the last drop, which actually came together after I got the vocals from PVC, something like this. And in the end, I think the most interesting part about the drums, I mean, yeah, the kick drum is from Serum, which now I make in Kick Ninja. The snare is the basic snare from Serum, which I made a couple of years ago. I just did a bunch of processings on it with convolution reverb and some noise tails and stuff, which I added with Shaperbox 3, for example, because I think it's a very natural way to add noise to a snare. And for example, with without the noise and the convolution reverbs, which I have in Snap Heap. Yeah, nothing too crazy. I think the main part which makes the drums come alive is the processing on the drum bus. Without the drum bus, it actually sounds quite lame if I leave the clipper and the limiter on to give it some volume. And with all the distortion and the compression, I think the drums really come to life. First up, we have just some basic multiband compression with a slow attack to not ruin the transients. Afterwards, some distortion, favorite distortion tool. Then EQ, yeah, for some minor balancing changes. Wave shaping, which is nothing special, like a standard curve on two different bands. And then we have Spectre to just add some distortion up top. And yeah, another multiband to just kind of glue it together, some gaining for automation. And that's basically it. And if we have a listen before and after. I think that's the most interesting part about the drums here. If you, again, have any questions regarding something, just comment it down below and I do my best to answer it. But I think for now, the drums aren't that interesting. And if somebody wants to know a bit more, you can always write me on Instagram and stuff. But now, since the video is already like, I think 5-6 minutes long, let's go to the most important part, and that's the bass. Welcome to the mess. So we go through lane by lane and I try to remember what I've done there. So basically how I structure everything is like you see the different folders which all have a bus inside them, and everything basically goes into this low end group where I sidechain everything. But in this tune I felt it needed a bit more processing, so I sent the sidechain and the low end to a sort of pre-master where I did a bit of more processing before actually sending it to the master, if that makes sense. The bass line, if we mute the drums, sounds like this. On its own, nothing really special. It actually sounds kind of messy. Starting from the top, there is a main sub bass. Absolutely nothing special, just a sine wave with the third harmonic turned up. Afterwards, we have a bass which is rendered out. This one was the sample bass from an old project, like one of the first projects, and I just bounced it out to audio, which is this. Moving on, let's open the folders one by one because I don't even know what's in there. It's always a bit of surprise browsing through old projects. What do we have? Oh, yes, that's sort of the main synth, which is a serum and another bounced serum. The main synth, like the down one is the FM one. And the top part is like, yeah, just a serum noise, which is like bandpassed and filtered down and with a delay on it. Which is, for those kind of basses, always nice to just have a short delay, which is going left-right to give it a bit more stereo. So if we go further down the list of basses I have here, we have a step bass, which is also printed to audio. I think it's this faceplant thing. I tried to remake a Matthews type bass in faceplant, sort of as a B answer to the main step. Afterwards, we have the sustain synth. Let's see what this is. Okay, well, also another noise layer. Then I think this is a 1. Also coming from Serum. And yeah, then we have the rest of the basses. Okay, then close everything back up and move to the second drop because we have a bunch of more interesting basses there. But they're basically all Serum. I think, yeah, a sub layer, which is like the sub with the modulated noise on it. And then we have this layer, which is, a preset from Tyen. And then, yeah. So now that we went over all the different things, I think the most important part about the layering of the basses is my kind of approach to sound design. As you might notice, there's a lot of different parts regarding the frequency spectrum. So the first thing which I have is always a main sub. For me, sound design is not finding the perfect preset which takes up the whole frequency spectrum. Sound design for me is like splitting it up into different sections. You have this the really low end. Then you have which kind of harmonics do you introduce first? Is it the second or the third harmonic? What do you do on the midsection? Do you have like a really broad midsection or do you have a narrow one which is like kind of aggressive? And I really structured from the bottom up. So starting with the sub bass, which kind of pattern do I want to use? Right here, for me, if I go back and just would try to remake it again, it would always be like the main sub layer playing the first note. So if we just have the drums and the sub, that's like how I would approach sound design. Have the sub bass laid out, then I would start introducing some top end just to emphasize the groove a bit more, like this one. And already you can tell how the song, just with two elements, develops to a good and groovy tune. And just by adding a lot of more synths, which are, if you look at the synths individually, they aren't really exciting because most of them are like just noise or just distorted mess, which I just cut up and laid over the groove. And even after all this mess, I think the main element which really made it come alive was, first of all, the vocals and the top layers. Because for me, I mean, it would be nice having just the low end and the drums. It's nice. It would work, but for me, especially the instruments make it from just bass line and drums to a whole tune, which is, I think, the most important part.
Step in the dance with all my tunes and watch them run.
So I've been editing this video for the last couple of hours And I sort of noticed that the ending was quite dumb and didn't make any sense, so I'm here recording a new one. Overall, the breakdown about Run wasn't like I intended it to. I sort of tried to explain everything, but during the process kind of remembered how messy the project was and how hard it felt for me to kind of get shit done in this project. As I kind of mentioned in the video, it's like my first proper club tune, which I made to play out live. And yeah, it also came from like 10 different versions. So it was like a project which got thrown through the bus and, I don't know, run over like 20 times. And there are so many different versions already. And during the recording, I kind of struggled to explain everything a bit. And that's why I didn't include all the presets and stuff. What I did was, what I thought I would do is down in the description below, I will give you a Dropbox link with the main synth from Run, just as a bit of a takeaway. You can have fun with it, can just mess with it and with sound design or whatever. But yeah, hope you still enjoyed the breakdown of Run. I want to do this quite more often, and I also recorded the one for my next single, which probably should be up right now as well, at the same time. And if you have, again, any questions, so just write it down below in the comments or ask me on Instagram or whatever. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you soon.